Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Atrioc and Ethan apologies, my videos on that last week. Twirling Barbie commented and said in all caps, "Oh my God, please don't tell people that you fantasize about them. I had that happen to me. It's extremely uncomfortable. It feels like someone is stalking you. Just do it in your thoughts and don't be creepy about it." End of comment. Yeah, so I think I might have been confusing in my discussion of that. It seems like some people might have been thinking that I was saying that you should tell people that you are fantasizing about them when you are if you're fantasizing sexually about someone, you should tell that person, a coworker, a friend, or something. And that was not what I intended to say. Sometimes I say things in a confusing manner. I've never thought that to be true, that you should automatically. It's debatable. There might be instances where that might be advised. But yeah, generally speaking, if you tell someone that is not going to be welcomed and it's going to be creepy, it's going to be violating. My position is that you should refrain from fantasizing about people unless you have consent to do so, because there's so many other things one could fantasize about. Like, why do you need to fantasize about a particular person? It could affect the way that you treat the person. It could come out. You could end up disclosing it to that person, and that could harm them. It could affect the way that you treat the person. Yeah, it's just something that could cause a lot of harm, and there's no reason to do it. The pros and the cons. There's far more cons than there are pros, so why do it? I think what I was saying was that if you are fantasizing about your partner, then you're freer to have a conversation. I think most partners would be okay with having a conversation about that. Not everyone, of course, but so I think I was saying feel free to talk with your partner about it, but strangers or friends or people that you're not involved with sexually, then you, one, shouldn't be fantasizing. If you are, then yeah, you should be very careful about disclosing it to that person. This is funny. So I have the same merch. I just realized I actually use this cup. Colin says, the minimization doesn't bode well. So Atrioc's apology. Atrioc's minimization doesn't bode well for preventing this from happening in the future. He said, I'm not the type of person who does this. Well, no, you are the type of person who does that because you did it. Yeah, absolutely. When people say that, I think what they're trying to say is the vision you have of someone that does something like this, I'm not like that. But yeah, if you did it, then you are the type of person that did it. And to minimize it and say that I'm not the type of person that did that. And I talked about that a lot in the video. There's a lot of minimization and a lot of centering himself in the apology. And I've already been over that. And I just realized that a bug, exterminator, someone that gets rid of bugs, is at my front door, so I have to go. Okay, I'm back. Jane Stone 206, you say, I have severe ADHD. Thank you for explaining my impulse problem in this episode. I self-isolate a lot and write down what I'm thinking because of it, just to make sure that I am properly articulating my thoughts and feelings to other people. End of comment. Yeah, so I hope that so the key to ADHD and impulse control and other issues related to ADHD is that you surround yourself with people that understand your neurodifference. And you have to understand it well enough yourself so that you can explain it. Good old Nocebo says, I don't know, I'm probably too cynical, but Ethan has, as a veteran YouTuber, tons of experience with being the guy that makes fun of other people's apologies. He knows exactly how a good apology should be constructed and delivered. I don't buy that he is genuinely sorry. His behavior was bad for business and bad for a social life. A perfect apology was needed in the situation, and he delivered something close to it. Now he can move on, and that's all. End of comment. Yeah, I don't know. It's possible that Ethan isn't genuine in his apology and he is just apologizing so that he can get his career back on track. It's also even furthermore possible that he created the whole controversy to begin with because he knew that it would generate press and a lot of attention on him, and then he could apologize and he could get more followers because of that, or just more engagement or something. There are examples of people doing things like that. So, those things are all possible. We can't know. All I can say is that from what I observed in his apology was a good apology. It could be lacking genuineness or in authenticity, but I just can't know. It looked genuine to me, but I can't tell. I can't read someone's mind. Okay, going on to Love is Blind, number 67. So this is when I'm starting to rewatch the season, which is a strange thing I've never done before. Sadie says, okay, I was getting a little tired of the Love is Blind interviews, but this, going back over the show after all your initial reactions and reacting to your hypotheses, it's like Inception, the movie Inception. I'm in a Dr. Honda dream within a dream within a dream. It's amazing. Yeah. Catbird says, hi, Dr. Kirk. Thanks for talking about how people can brag incessantly due to insecurity. I have someone like this in my life, and they've expressed disinterest in going to therapy. Family gatherings can be difficult because this person will try to assert their abilities and others will just argue with them. It feels like I'm watching an 8-year-old brag. It's sad to see because I do get the sense that it all comes from insecurity with this person. What's the best way to interact with people like this in our lives? Should we try to build them up by affirming them when they brag? Are there other strategies too that could be helpful? End of comment. Yeah, I mean, it depends, case-by-case basis, of course. But in general, generally speaking, if you want them to stop bragging, then yeah, you might want to try just going along with their brags. As a therapist, that's what I do. But therapy is different than a family gathering, right? So when you do that, they might be able to relax because that's what they're searching. They're searching for narcissistic supply. And when they don't get it, they just double down. And so if you give them some narcissistic supply, it will, soothe them for a bit of time until they need more of it, right? Now, depending on how pathological this person is, there might not be anything you can do to actually mitigate the annoyance of it all. But generally speaking, yeah, you can. And that's what you do with, think of it like a child. If you have an adult, they're 35 years old and they're bragging all the time. Just think about them as a 4th grader or a 2nd grader or something. That's usually when there's a fair amount of bragging that will come out of kids. And when kids do this, you don't really think much of it because it's well understood, or hopefully well understood, that that's what kids do. Kids will, even younger, they'll say things like, I'm a fast runner, or I can throw the ball farther than anybody. And you're like, in your head, you're like, no, you can't. But you don't say that because you understand, hopefully, that the kid is bragging because they're insecure or they're trying on how they compare to other people. They're experimenting with things and they really like how far they can throw a ball. And you might even literally say, yes, you can throw the ball more. Oh my God, you threw the ball so far. You might even fake that you can't throw the ball as far as them because hopefully you understand that that's what they need. For some people, they never move past that stage because they were never given enough self-esteem or enough security or enough compliments or enough attachment security to be able to move forward. So at least a temporary solution might be just to appease their bragging and say, oh my God, yeah, well, that's great. Look at you. You're really, really good. That might work. It might not work. Or just tell them that regardless of their accomplishments, you like them. Because that's usually what they're searching for, right? That's the conundrum with narcissistic supply, is that they are insecure because they were treated poorly growing up. And their solution is to try to prop up this false sense of superiority in their minds. That they're trying to convince themselves that they're superior, and they're trying to convince everyone else that they're superior. So that's the constant bragging. And the problem is, though, is as they do that, they actually push people away and people won't like them very much. So they end up feeling more insecure about themselves, and then they need more narcissistic supply, and it's just a vicious cycle, right? So if you can interrupt that somehow by staying close to them and saying, hey, you know what? It's really great that you have all these great accomplishments, and you should be proud of yourself for sure. But I just want to tell you that I like you for who you are. You don't need to say all those things for me to like you. I like you because of this. I like you because of that, more other qualities, like I like you because you're fun to be with, or you like to talk about interesting things, or at times you're caring and you listen to me, and those are the reasons why I like you. So you're moving around that cycle for them. And if you can go straight to the core, they might actually learn, one, like, oh, so I don't need to brag in order for people to like me. And also it might soothe them so that they don't need to engage in that cycle. If you've ever seen someone like this, you might observe that the more insecure the situation is, the more bragging that they will engage in. If they're with new people that they don't know that well, they might brag even more because they're insecure in that situation. Or you might just tell them how the bragging makes you feel. You might say, hey, I just want to tell you, I value our relationship enough to take this risk and tell you this, that when you brag, it actually makes me feel like I'm just here to praise you, and it feels alienating to me, and it hurts my feelings. It feels kind of like you're pushing me away, or you're not listening to me, or you're trying to frequently assert that you're better than me or everyone else than a lot of things. And you should be proud of yourself for sure, but it just kind of hurts my feelings. It feels like you're pushing me away, and I don't want that to happen. It feels bad. You could say that. Again, it depends on the relationship. It depends on the situation. There's a chance that there's nothing you can do with some of these people. They might need a tremendous amount of therapy to change. So, KJ says Cole's first wife was a nurse. Oh, I didn't know that. Did that come up? Right. So Cole says, I don't do nurses. And I'm like, huh? Why? Or I think I might have speculated, was his first wife a nurse? Anyway, so sounds like that's the case. Love is Blind, number 68, KD says, I got the impression when watching the show that Colleen was more upset about being rejected because of her insecurity about her bland personality than she was upset about the individuals who were rejecting her. Yeah, interesting. I hadn't received it that way, but I could absolutely see that being the case, that instead of interpreting it as Colleen was genuinely invested in Cole and Brennan and thus crying because of the rejection, it was that she was mildly invested in Cole and Brennan, but upon being rejected by them, it was more of a worry for her, or a hurt, a painful thought that, oh no, I am realizing once again that I don't have a personality, because that's what people have said to me before. And to be clear, I don't think that she doesn't have a personality. Usually when we describe people with that descriptor, that they don't have personality, it's because they have not been allowed to be themselves. They've gone through a lot of traumas, resulting in them looking outward a lot to please other people. There's a self, there's a personality, there's a person there, but they've been denied the opportunity to express it and get to know it. Borrow says, kind of cool to hear that most schemas develop between the ages of 0 and 5. Yeah, that's often what I'm saying. My son turned 5, and I've been trying really hard the whole time as a parent. Now I can just coast. Yeah, I'm guessing you're joking, Borrow, but certainly it's very important to pay attention to the way that you are parenting your child 0 to 5. It's important to pay attention throughout the lifespan, even into adulthood, but it's critical that parents know what they're doing with infants and preschool age kids because of this reason. Having said that, of course, traumas beyond the age of 5 between parents and kids can absolutely affect a child. And the opposite, you can correct for mistakes that were made 0 to 5 as the child ages, for sure. For example, if a child at age 4 has a preoccupied attachment style, if you engage in a lot of corrective experiences with that child, then they can switch from a primarily preoccupied style to a secure style. So it's not set in stone by any means. That's why we have therapy. We have therapy for people of all ages. You can go to therapy when you're 65 years old and have awareness and corrective experiences that can change your personality. So, it's never set in stone. It just takes longer. If you develop, say, an insecure attachment style when you are 0 to 5, it might take 20 years of therapy to counteract that, right? So it's a matter of time and effort. The amount of effort and time that it takes to develop secure attachment 0 to 5 is 5 years, or maybe even less than that, maybe 3 years, 0 to 3, maybe even less than that. I mean, sometimes a lot of the attachment style is developed 0 to 2, maybe even 0 to 1. A lot of the classic measurements are taken at 18 to 24 months. And there's already trends that have been observed in children at that age. So, and for you parents out there with young kids, or you people who are planning on having kids soon, the key is attunement. Attunement. What is attunement? Attunement is noticing your child's state, their emotion, their experience, and reacting appropriately. It's, there's a billion different situations that we could talk about, but one example, say your child is 9 months old and they're feeling uncomfortable about their diaper. So that's the first experience that they're having, is discomfort. And they register the discomfort and they start to cry, or they start to fuss with you. You're holding them and the kid's pushing you or something, okay? Some sort of cue, some sort of bid, some sort of communication, because the child isn't verbal yet and can't say things, so they have to indicate their feelings through other means, right? And they have a limited set of expressions, pre-language, to be able to talk about or communicate what they're going through. And they also have limited awareness of what they're going through. So anyway, the kid will signal somehow some discomfort, some sort of negativity. And you as a parent are attuned in that you are tuning in to the child's state. So you notice that first, because not everyone notices. Some parents are great at one or the other and not the other. So they might be great at reacting, but they're not great at noticing. Or they're great at noticing, but they're not great at reacting. You have to be great at both, or sufficient at both, good enough at both. No one's perfect in either of these. So you notice the child's discomfort, their negativity, and then you react by checking on things. You go, okay, what's going on? And then you see the diaper situation. Oh, okay, it's the diaper situation, and you address it relatively quickly, right? So the child learns that when they have a negative situation, or any situation, that they can signal it in their way, and their caregiver will notice them and react to soothe them, to correct the situation, right? So that is attunement. And parents know how to do this. The vast, vast majority of parents know how to attune. We've done it for centuries and millennia without any education. Parents, we evolved to attune to our children. So usually it's a matter of stripping away barriers and distractions and traumas in our own life. Once you you don't have to produce attunement. I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking right now at the exterminator person is walking around the house. So my dogs are like, what are you doing in our yard? What I tell parents is you don't have to create a natural instinct to attune. You have that natural instinct, but there are barriers to your natural instinct to attune. There might be some fine tuning to your attunement, noticing some ideas about facial expressions from kids. Like one of the things that I'll try to remove is this cultural indoctrination into this idea that crying is wrong, or that boys need to be tough, right? There's certain ideas that parents will have absorbed from society. And so we want to get rid of that, because that can interfere with proper attunement to the kid. When you do that, 0 to 2, 0 to 1, 0 to 3, then your child learns, I am good enough for attunement. I'm worthy of attunement. I'm worthy of people paying attention to me and soothing me and knowing me and caring about me. And other people can be trusted. These are the working models. Working model of other, working model of self. You want a good enough working model of self and a good enough working model of other, in which you notice that You're a good person. You have some flaws, but you're generally good. Other people are trustworthy and good and caring and loving. They have some flaws, but generally speaking, they're good. When you have those working models, then you have a much easier time in life in all the areas that we care about. School, mental health, relationships, parenting themselves. When secure people grow up to have kids, they are better attuned to their children. Physical health, did I mention drug addiction? Differentiation, self-esteem, all the things are related to attachment, and attachment is a function of attunement for the most part. There are other factors of disposition and other things I could get into, but that's what I'm talking about. So Kay says, I cry over everything. I'm fully prepared for Dr. Kirk's Criers Unite merch. Yeah, Criers Unite. Yes. I mean, it's not a bad idea, honestly, because I think that would communicate something to people when they see it, right? It seems like they would understand I don't know. What would people think of it if they saw you wearing a Criers Unite? I don't know. I can see a lot of people thinking of it as making fun of people. I don't know. Maybe there would be a parentheses of, it's okay to cry, it's human to cry, or it's healthy to cry. Maybe that would be it. C. Juanita says, Dr. Kirk saying, I'm a ballerina, I'm a good person, I'll be whatever you want me to be. That's going to be in a no context Dr. Kirk video, LOL. Yeah. So apparently in the video I was saying, I'm a ballerina, I'm a good person, I'll be whatever you want me to be. And I just did it again. When I am making these videos, and as a therapist and as a professor, I am often role-playing things, right? I'll be acting as if I'm someone else or whatever. And it's just really easy to pull those snippets, and it makes me look really silly out of context. I watch those videos sometimes, by the way, the no context videos. I can't remember the channel. If someone knows the channel, you might want to comment below. There's a few, and there's one on Instagram, and I don't know. I find them to be hilarious. I laugh at myself all the time. I hope that is clear. And so when people are, because some people were concerned for my feelings. They're like, hey, don't make fun of Dr. Kirk. And it's like, it's not making fun at me, right? It's not laughing at my expense. I absolutely do not take it that way. I take it as, laughing with me. I'm laughing along. I'm like, yeah, that was really funny out of context. And also, it's a good thing to laugh at yourself because we're all laughable people. We do laughable things frequently. And I think it releases us from the shame. To not laugh at the self, I think, is evidence of deep, deep shame that you can't tolerate even the idea that you have done something that is silly. And so to be able to take a deep breath and laugh at yourself, you're just saying, hey, now there's a line, of course, where you're participating in humiliation and ridicule of the self, which isn't okay. Anyway, patron Blythe from Philly, she said, this is an email. Dr. Kirk, the first time, so this is about Andrew Callahan, the videos I made. Patron Blythe from Philly, she says, Dr. Kirk, the first time I heard about Andrew Callahan was watching your apology reactions. I hadn't heard of him before. I was curious about his content, so I Googled him and ended up down a rabbit hole. I am wondering what your take is on the ethics of consuming his content after this horrendous news has come out. I find this content extremely interesting and, frankly, societally important, the stuff that Andrew Callahan does. I'm curious to hear your take on this. I can reckon with him contributing something good to society while simultaneously causing massive harm, but not sure how to approach his content. Thanks, you're the best. Thank you, Blythe. So first off, what I'll say is that in the Andrew Callahan video and episodes, I don't think I included enough of the allegations because it was so triggering. And as a result, I think you could walk away, if you don't know the situation fully, you could walk away from the situation that the stuff that I made, thinking, well, what's the big deal? Andrew Callahan, it sounds like he has some things to learn. He sounds like he was being a little bit creepy on these dates, but it wasn't that bad. And I don't know everyone's reaction, but I did hear some of that reaction. And it's because there was and I included some of this one individual's allegations against Andrew Callahan. The one that she expected on going on not a date, but meeting up for dinner with him so he could apologize for being sexually aggressive with her. And then he proceeded to be even more sexually aggressive with her. And there was a segment of her story that I took out because it was an actual assault, a physical, coercive, forceful assault on her body. And I took that out because it was so graphic and awful. And so I took that out. But I think by doing that, I took out the main story that needs to be told, because all these other individuals that are also coming forward and saying he's done things have alluded to that experience, but they haven't, or at least the ones that I saw, they didn't provide a full description of it, which is fine. But this one individual provided a very descriptive, convincing description that really took his behavior from what we would say common sexist, misogynistic dating practices of men. You know, like one of the things that my wife said actually was, she was watching the video and she wasn't all the way through it, but she was like, you know, what Andrew Callahan did, my wife is saying, I have experienced that countless times. Men have been very, pushy is the word for it, I guess. And if that is terrible, then wow, I mean, there's a lot of really terrible people in the world. And certainly that is not okay. Being pushy is not okay. And that needs to fucking end now. But what Andrew Callahan did, if you hear the full story, particularly from that one individual, was way beyond just common pushiness. So I hope that, in fact, afterwards, I felt like I needed to re-edit or remake the videos, because the way it looked like I was doing what misogynists will accuse, or red pill people will accuse people of me doing, where they'll think that I'm canceling someone because I'm virtue signaling, right? And I really did not want that to be out there, because I feel like I gauge my reaction, or I don't know, I have authentic, normal reactions, and I try to gauge that reaction based on the transgression that is happening, right? So if it was quote unquote pushiness, which is not okay, then I think my reaction would have been commensurate with that. But my reaction was commensurate with someone I was using the word monstrous or something like that. And I don't use those words lightly. I don't use those words for common pushiness. I wouldn't use the word monster for common pushiness from toxic masculine men or people. If you're interested, I would watch that video that I was referring to. I cited the YouTube channel that I was watching. I can't remember the name of it. But Patron Blythe from Philly, to get to your question, you're asking, hey, I understand that Andrew Callahan did something horrendous, has done a number of things that are horrendous, and I've watched his content and appreciate what he's doing. He is actually providing something that is a social good. Is it okay to watch his content now? And the way that I'll answer that question is, obviously it's complicated, but the larger question that we're asking when we're asking questions like that is, are we part of the problem or are we part of the solution? Am I part of the problem or the solution? And if you, as an individual, Patron Blythe, in advocating, raising awareness, and being an activist for the support of victims, are you an advocate against people who abuse people like this? Are you aware of the feminist tenets that are the foundation of a lot of these discussions? Are you on board with those things? Then you are part of the solution. And if you watch the Andrew Callahan videos, in addition to that, then overall, you're part of the solution, right? And often in today's society, the way that things get reduced to is that, for example, if you watch Harry Potter or you read the Harry Potter books or you like Harry Potter, then you're anti-trans, even if everything else that you're doing along those lines is pro-trans, pro-non-binary, pro-LGBTQIA, then it doesn't matter because you like Harry Potter, so you're canceled. And that is overly simplistic, obviously. For example, for me, I like Woody Allen movies. some of Woody Allen movies are some of my favorite movies of all time. Definitely top 50. Some of this, Annie Hall, Interiors, Hannah and Her Sisters, Match Point, Crimes and Misdemeanors. He's made a lot of movies, and there's a lot of duds in there, but some of his movies are some of my favorite. And I am a massive advocate for Dylan Farrow, who has come forward multiple times and over multiple years, stating that Woody Allen had abused her when she was young, very young, like 3, 4, or 5 years old. And her story sounds believable to me. And I've made episodes about this. I've spoken up about it. I've also, throughout my career, my 25 plus years in the field and really beyond, have been an advocate for victims along these lines. I treat victims along these lines. I treat perpetrators along these lines. I help victims come out. I help victims get safe. I supervise and teach trainees around these issues. So am I overall part of the solution or part of the problem? I'm going to just go ahead and say I'm part of the solution. I'm trying to be part of the solution. And yet I also occasionally, once every 6 months or something, will rewatch or watch a new Woody Allen movie. So overall, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? The same goes for anything Bill Cosby has done or Michael Jackson or any Kevin Spacey. Is that his name? Kevin Spacey? Yeah, his stuff. To reduce individuals to whether or not they like Harry Potter or watch Woody Allen movies or watch Andrew Callahan videos, to reduce people to just that one behavior is overly simplistic and is evidence of our overly simplistic world. I think we've always been that way, but it manifests in a particular way today on Twitter and on the internet. That, you have 128 characters. Is that how much you have? And it doesn't provide nuance. So if someone watches Andrew Callahan, then you say this person watches Andrew Callahan, they're canceled. And that's the end of the story. That's the end of the nuance. That's the end of the whole description. And then you have a bunch of people that will pile on within 128 characters, and there you go. Instead of evaluating the individual's full resume. I mean, honestly, to me, for you, Blythe, if you're part of the solution regarding victims' rights, anti-perpetration, if you're generally speaking part of the solution and you watch Andrew Callahan videos, plus the things that Andrew Callahan is talking about is often advocating for victims, for the oppressed. So it's his content that's what's so strange about it, honestly, is that a lot of his content was in line with a lot of the things that we talk about on this channel. But we know from experience, and I talked about this in the episode, like with Bill Cosby, we know that someone can do good things and also do horrific, monstrous things. And how do we conceptualize that? It's hard to know, and it's up to each individual to conceptualize it as you want to. We can conceptualize it as these individuals were just doing the good things as a smokescreen for their bad things, or people are complicated. In that someone can be a force for good, a genuine altruistic force for good, and a force for bad. So, you can make that determination for yourself. The way I would answer it, Patron Blythe, and I think I'm in the minority on this, that if you're part of the solution and you watch Andrew Callahan videos, that's ethically fine in my book. Big Ed 65, dog trainer, says, Liz asked her friend to model for pictures so Liz could learn about taking pictures. This wasn't just about getting good pictures of the friend, so Ed was being ridiculous and Liz was right to get offended. End of comment. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. So if that's true, that would be a larger indictment on Ed in that situation that I wasn't commenting on. For sure, absolutely. But I don't think it erases everything that I was saying. Big Ed 66, political troll, good old political troll, says, I don't think Ed cheats. Because I was asking that. I was like, do we really think that Ed cheats? We don't know, but he doesn't seem to come across like, because that seemed to be the big push in the tell-all, was that he's a cheater and Rose and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It's possible, but that doesn't seem to be the main problem, at the very least, with Ed. And so I was asking people what they think, and Political Troll says, I don't think Ed cheats, but I think that every time they break up, Liz and Ed, I think that every time they break up, Ed gets super excited like a kid in a candy store and rushes out to find someone who he can hang out with using his fame from the show. Yeah, I think that framing it that way might be a legitimate conceptualization. Okay, Big Ed 67, Maria says, this channel has been so helpful the last couple of years identifying my own issues. It's not always easy seeing yourself in the cast, especially when they get internet hate. But I really have been able to work on so much now that I'm more self-aware. For example, Tanya and Kalani with their codependency, overfunctioning, and micromanaging. Also, Colt and Debbie and the family Libby, Elizabeth and Andre family. I've learned about enmeshment, triangulation, and generational trauma in my life. And also with Zenib, with her insecurities, her belittling behavior, and her condescending behavior, I've learned about myself. It's so weird to tell people I've gotten life-changing advice from watching 90 Day Fiancé, LOL. But it's all thanks to Dr. Honda. Well, that's great. That's why I do this, Maria, is for exactly this. And as a subset of why I'm on this planet, I think it is to help people to see that these behaviors are not hateful things, right? Often on the show, or the reaction to the show, is people will hate literally everyone on the show for a different reason. And what I'm trying to do is say, look, there's no reason to hate these individuals. They are doing these things probably out of relational traumas. And so they don't know why they're doing it. Also, there's cultural elements that they're adhering to and they've been indoctrinated into, toxic masculinity being one. And so, let's take it easy on them, not only for their sake, but for our own sake, because all of us, I would be extremely surprised if you, dear viewer right now, if you have never seen yourself in some of the behavior on the show that I've been commenting on. It would be strange. It could happen. I could see a scenario where your particular issues are so specific that they're just not represented in a cast member on the show. But that would be surprising, but possible. I think it's much more likely that there have been opportunities for you to say, oh, I'm like so-and-so. And for the internet to hate those people is really for us to shame ourselves, which causes us to go into denial, which is what we see all the time, right? Whereas if we can look at all the cast members and see that they have good qualities with some unfortunate personality tendencies, which all of us have, and someone like myself can provide a compassionate conceptualization of that, then we are all given an opportunity to look at ourselves in a non-shameful way. And that is helpful, right? Look at our partners in a non-condescending, non-shameful way as well. It provides an opportunity to actually change and to actually improve our lives. To just hate these individuals, I think, is not productive. Now, if people hate and then they take a break to differentiate and to reflect and be more quote unquote objective or more compassionate towards the cast members themselves, okay, so you can vacillate the two. But there are a lot of people seemingly who just hate. That's all they do. And I think it's a projection. I think they're projecting, they hate an aspect of themselves that they've internalized from their caregivers, by the way. They hated their mom for being a certain way. They have now become like their mom. They don't like to recognize that. People start accusing them of that. They are deeply, deeply shameful of that, and they deny it about the self. They project it in someone on the cast, and then they proceed to hate that individual instead of hating themselves, instead of hating their mother. And when we stop that cycle, then we're actually given a chance to look at ourselves, look at our mom, look at the cast members, and start to wrestle with some of these ideas and change, and so that we can better our lives. So Maria, it sounds like you're doing that, which is fantastic. I mean, from what it sounds like you're saying is that you recognize in yourself that you're an overfunctioner and a micromanager, that you engage in triangulation and have enmeshment, and you have generational trauma, and that you can engage in belittling and condescending behavior because of your insecurities. And that because of that awareness, you are now learning how to change, which is just tremendous. The amount of maturity and morality there. It is a moral act to be compassionate towards these people. I want to cry just thinking about it. To be compassionate towards these people and being compassionate towards the self. It's immoral, in my view, to just attack the cast members. I think that it's it's just not okay to do so. And I think it spreads a lot of the ills of our society. It spreads this idea that you can just hate someone and black and white someone, that you can see someone in this very black and white manner. And we, of course, see the result of this way of thinking in the political discourse and the Twitter discourse to just simplify people and reduce them down to this black and white perspective is destructive in so many ways. And so for you to do what you're doing, Maria, is, I think, very high-minded and very good. Bilal and Shaida, number 24. Mama says, seeing Bilal and Ed treating their romantic partners gives me Jesse flashbacks. Jesse was pretty distorted about Darcy being an alcoholic. Bilal makes Shaida into a child, and Ed makes a lesbian cheat out of Liz. That seems to be the pattern with such personalities like Jesse, Bilal, and Ed. Do abusive people like this choose their partners according to their over-accommodating or submissive vibes? So they play into the role of being inferior and making them look better next to them? End of question. Yeah, that's what often will happen. But it's often framed, at least on the internet, and by some clinicians, that it's a Machiavellian planned event, that these individuals will seek someone who is over-accommodating so that they can proceed to enact their abuse of the individual. And certainly that does happen, but more often, much more often, the abusive individual is just looking for someone to fall in love with. They're looking for someone that feels compatible to them, like we all are, right? Among a number of dimensions, but one of the major dimensions is when the abusive person engages in their insecure attachment reactivity in the style of abuse, belittling and mansplaining or talking down to or control or something. Even there'll be little indications of that early in a relationship. So, for example, Ed and Liz, say they go on their 5th date, and Liz starts to talk about she's had a couple glasses of Malbec. I mean, anyway, she starts to refer to a past boyfriend or something, or talk about a guy at work or something. Oh yeah, that's what Jeff said at work. And Ed, in that moment, we could imagine, would pull away a little bit, not do what he does later on down the line, further into the relationship, but there's a little bit of a rejection or a little bit of hostility from Ed in that moment. Like, oh, well, Jeff sounds like a complete a-hole, or wow, that past, I don't know, how do you hear about your past boyfriends or something like that? Or I don't know. There's a lot of different ways Ed might react in a situation like that. But it's a little indication. It's not abusive, but it's a sign of something, right? And so in that moment, Ed is trying to communicate his attachment insecurity. He's trying to bid for more security. And then if the individual is over-accommodating, then the Liz's, the Shaidas, the Darcys of the world might react to that in a way it's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then they might even come across like they're to blame for it or something. And then they correct for it in the future and refrain from any behavior along those lines in the future. And to the Eds and Bilals and Jessys of the world, they won't register it consciously, but over time you add up all the interactions, and comparatively they feel more secure with this individual as they would in other relationships, right? They go on a different set of dates with a different person who isn't over accommodating, and the individual, upon getting that kind of message, they don't really register it, or they think, well, okay, I mean, he seems to be a little jealous of that, but I'm just talking about Jeff at work. That's more of a hidden problem, and if he wants to talk to you about it, he can, but I'm not going to stop talking about men at work. I work with a lot of people at work of various genders, and so it's okay for me to talk about that person. And so they just continue to talk about Jeff and John or whoever at work, and it starts to aggravate this abusive person in this style of abuse, of jealousy and control. And the individual who's abusive evaluates, I don't know if I like this person. They don't necessarily know why they don't like the person, but it just feels that way to them, and then they will reject or sabotage the relationship or something like that. So over time, the relationships that tend to last with abusive people tend to be with over-accommodating people pleasers. All right, well, let's end it there, actually. I don't usually do this, but I want to break up this comments video into 2 videos. So let's end it there. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.